Coming up on Stowe Nation.
My main thing is just, I hear a lot of time from people like, I'm waiting to get this to go. I'm waiting to get that. As soon as I get my roof rack on, I'm going to go, listen, just go. Get some safety stuff like recovery gear. Depending on like what recovery gear and what other stuff you have, just how far, just get out. The sooner you get out there, the better. So don't let it be discouraging. If you want to have that old school sense of adventure like Lewis and Clark, that's all. It's like discovering the West. That's my favorite thing. Is like seeing new places and the idea of like being out in the middle of nowhere. So you can do it. Just go, do it. That's it.
Welcome to another episode of Stowe Nation, a production of Park Media. Before I introduce today's guest, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, share, and leave a 5-star review. And if you find this podcast useful in any way and want to pay us the ultimate compliment, head on over to our Patreon page where you can subscribe to be a Classic, Stealth, or Beast Mode subscriber. Welcome back, Stowe Nation. On this episode, Cody Foster and I talk about how to safely overland by planning properly, knowing what recovery, medical, and communication gear you need to get yourself out of a pickle. And Cody also talks about lowering air pressure down in your tires and how to drive carefully with them aired down. Plus, he talks about basic survival skills everyone needs to know before venturing out by themselves. So whether you're an advanced overlander and have tons of experience or just beginning, there's something for everyone to learn on this episode. So with that, please sit back, relax, and welcome Cody Foster to the Stowe Nation family.
I don't think they even sell Foster's beer anymore. Do they?
I don't know. I haven't seen Foster's beer in a long time.
No, it used to be the B's and E's.
What's a B's and E's?
That means like the hip and jive thing. I guess that's something in the bee world. I'm not a biologist though, so.
A biologist?
I'm not a biologist. But yeah.
All right, cool. All right, well, you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Well, Cody, thanks for coming on to Stowe Nation today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate you carving out some time. You had a little experience this
Yeah,
morning.
you're telling me, man.
Going to the ER. That was crazy.
Yeah, so that worked out where I got up like 4:30 to feed my kid, right? And I was like, oh, okay. The kid was kicking her little legs. And so when I was giving her a bottle, I was like, oh, man, oof. I got a little stomach pain, and then it just like intensified where I felt like someone was stabbing me with a bayonet.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and then I was like, man, this might pass. Every guy's like, I'll be all right.
Yeah.
And then it just kept getting worse, and then all of a sudden I went to my in-home doctor, Google, and I Googled like what the problem, lower left abdominal pain, and then I was worried it was going to be like what's the thing that bursts?
Oh, appendix.
Yeah, I was like, man, because like kidney stone, I'm like, okay, I can deal with it, but appendix burst, and I think he died from that. So,
oh yeah,
yeah. So I was googling like left side low. I'm like, that's a kidney stone. Then it got to the point where, yeah, it was bad. So I drove myself to the ER, which that was interesting. It was only 15 minutes, but it was a solid 15-minute drive.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
the longest 15-minute drive ever.
Yeah, like I was telling you earlier, it was seriously. I was doing the whole. Well, I guess if I ever got shot, this is probably similar to how it would feel. What would I do? Just sit there and roll up in a ball? Like, no, I guess I would have to keep going. So
yeah,
I drove there, and then they took about an hour, and then they gave me some pain meds for that, and then they just said it's a kidney stone. They scan you, So I just got to wait for it. That's it. It's intense. Because the track, I guess, from the kidney down to the bladder, that little route right there, that's the painful route. Yeah. The rest of it's all right. That's the painful route. That's one that like buckles you over with pain. So
dang. I actually listened to a podcast about how they try to resolve the pain and get rid of the kidney stones, and one of them is like to basically laser them and break them into a bunch of smaller ones. Yeah. But then there's complications of having a bunch of smaller ones in there too.
Do you just go through it like 10 times then? Because that's the other thing I was thinking. If I didn't know if it was like a small meteorite or like you know what I mean, or like a river rock going in there. River rock wouldn't be too bad; it's all nice and smooth. Or it's like a huge asteroid coming in that's it's got all these jagged edges, and in my head vision looked like the size of a grape. But luckily it was like on the medium smaller side, so they didn't have to like break it up. But if they break it up, you have just two painful things traveling down the road.
It's damned if you do, damned if you don't.
So, but anyway, they give me a little morphine to kill the instant pain, and then I'm good now.
Are you still on morphine right now?
No, they give me, what is it? They give me some other kind of drug. I don't know. I took one like 2 hours ago, so this is medicating me. Hello.
Well, not to go down that rabbit hole too much, but I do appreciate you, kind of.
Man, I'd be sitting at the house anyway, so what's the difference?
I was trying to give you some cred, some street cred
Oh,
out
okay.
there.
I mean, thank you. I appreciate
being
it.
all
Yeah.
rough and tough and be like, oh, I'm doing this podcast no matter what.
Yeah. I was like, because my wife, we were talking about it. I'm like, well, I'm going to be at the home anyway. So I'll be sitting in the chair talking to nobody or even talking to you. So I was like, might as well talk to you.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for those who don't know you, Cody, we met when we organized the New Year's Eve trip for Stowe Nation, and that was a lot of fun. And I know your position in the team basically is you're the route person, and you have like a bunch of. So I've been told. No, I'm just joking. A bunch of experience and whatnot, and you teach classes. So for those that aren't familiar with you or never heard of you, you want to just talk about your bio real quick?
Yeah. So I spent 20 plus years in the Marine Corps. I joined out of high school like at 18, like a lot of people did. And this is the funny thing. So I went 03. So 03 option, meaning like anything in the infantry field, I didn't care. Like my grandfather was in for a long time, so I always kind of knew I was going to do it. So I went 03 option, and I didn't even know what the job was at first. They come in there, they pick you out. After you get through like the infantry school, they sit you in these bleachers and they call off what your actual job's going to be, right? So they pull me out and they say, hey, okay, you guys are going to be LAV dudes. And I'm like, what the hell is that LAV guy? And they show us this video like in 1980s, looks like something out of Heartbreak Ridge, where like an LAV, which is like an 8-wheel tank, that this is an 8-wheel drive tank that goes off road. I'm like, that's my job. I'm like, that sounds rad. So being 18 years old, so that was the first thing I got into. So you start off as a driver and then you move up to like a vehicle commander. So I did that for, last 20 years, and then went all over from, all the United States and Egypt and Japan, and got to hang out a little bit for the invasion during Iraq in 2003, and then went back in 2009-10 for Afghanistan, and then so I just pretty much been route. So I was like so pretty much overland for me is what I was doing in the military minus the guns and bombs and stuff. So that was that.
So it's posh overland.
Yeah,
for you.
yeah. So it's like, see, like, it's not too bad at all. So yeah, so it was a good way to continue over, because when I got out off active duty the first time, me and a couple buddies, we got together and started doing it about 15 years ago, and then so I was just doing the same, like I planned the routes, and when I was in with the LAR units, I was always the point man. So the captain would say, this is where we need to do and where we need to go and which way you want to go. So I'll plot it out.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. So when you're planning a route, what are the things that you need to watch out for? Like, what are the, I guess the green light things that makes a route good, the yellow things that you need to avoid, and then the red where you're just like, don't do it.
So every state's a little different, right? So you have, when like the planning process, it takes more than just, just a single map. So usually I use a combination of things for like the trip we plan. The first step is just, pick an area. Once you get the area picked out, you identify what your points of interest is going to be. And then once you get that figured out, then you try to figure out how you can link them all together using routes. And every state's a little different, depending if it's like a fire road, or if it's like an improved road, or it's like a forest road, or like a national park road. And on the map itself, it has the way there, because a Forest Service road in California might be trimmed to fit like a van-sized vehicle, but a Forest Service road in Nevada is trimmed to fit like a quad. So every state, you got to kind of learn the states a little bit.
Right.
So once you get that part down, I just link all the routes together, and then.
Well, for those that haven't learned, like, what's the best research method to be able to try to find out if the width of the road and stuff like that?
Oh, so there's a couple options, right? I use Gaia for all my navigation side. It's my main planning tool. I offset that a little bit with Onyx Off-Road, which works really well because it has a little more information. They sell like these off-road books. I got one over here that shows like trail information, like how wide it is, what's the difficulty rating, all that stuff. So Onyx Off-Road has that in there. So instead of having to have a bunch of books, you click on a trail and it shows you. So that's a big one. And then once you find the trail number itself, you just pop that thing in the old Google. And then it'll come back. You'll see most likely somebody has traveled on that road before, and you can start to go off their notes. But once again, remember that's someone else relaying information to you, so you know how official it is.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so you get the area, you kind of get your POIs, you basically connect the dots.
Yeah.
What's the next step?
Well, there's a couple things, because you're like, on the map, you look at the map and it says 20 miles away. You're like, 20 miles? We can get that done in 15, 20 minutes. But then you're like, okay, well, on this type of road, which at the bottom of the legend of a map, you can see how the road is labeled, whether it's like an improved road, dirt road, trail, 4x4, all that kind of stuff. So you got to think, okay, this might be 20 miles, but we're going about 5 miles an hour. So that 20-mile route is now what's 4. That's 4 hours long. So I'm like, it's gonna take me 4 hours to get from A to B, and then another. This road's a little faster, so it's only gonna take me 2 hours to cover 20 miles. So that's kind of stuff you kind of got to think in your head. It might seem short on paper, but in reality, it's gonna take quite longer.
Yeah, it might be going up, down,
Up and hill
down,
elevation, the road condition itself. Yeah, it's
Okay, gotcha. Okay, good tips. What other tips do you got?
for planning wise.
For planning.
So the big thing, once you get like the area to decide, is the weather's part of it too, right? So if you are in a desert environment, rain is a big problem because a lot of those places like washes and like slot canyons. So if you want to go exploring slot canyons on a nice sunny day that's clear, it's no big deal. But if you take that same day and now you put a storm 20 miles down upstream, it's a huge problem. So you got to look out for that kind of stuff before you put yourself and everybody else into that kind of position.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So weather, terrain, anything else? Like, what are the things if you see something on the map and you're just like, oh man, I definitely need to stay away from that? Is that possible?
So we did 2 years ago, I planned a route from the north, from California, Oregon, and Nevada all meet, the little, what's it called, the little geotag points, the little metal coin, you know what I'm saying? The surveyor mark.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
We'll just call it the surveyor.
The surveyor mark, yeah. So the surveyor mark, there was one, there was probably about 10 vehicles that were going with us, and I saw where the point is, and it was up a hill. So we all climbed up the hill, got to that's like our go point. But we went from there 900 miles all across dirt over the mountain ranges to Nevada to Vegas. So with that trip itself, I had a route planned out, but I had to, throughout at the end of the day, I would stop, open the map, and see like how much we've progressed as far as time, how much time we have left, and might like adjust the route. So with that, you're looking at something called contour lines is a big one for me. So contour lines, if you don't know what a contour line is, it's how you can show elevation and relief on a map. So the closer the contour lines together, it's usually the steeper the terrain is. So if you're looking at a road going up a hill, if the lines are really steep, that means it's a really steep hill, and that depends on the road conditions of the vehicles you have, it might not be a good idea. Or you can find some really cool campsites. If you see like a bunch of contour lines really close together, that's a huge cliff, and that might be a good stop for the night and camp. So
right, okay, all good advice. Do you have anything else advice-wise for planning?
Planning, you should be able to know the route in your head prior to going. Like you can visualize. If you didn't, and this is about, it depends. If you're going like you and me and my wife go all the time solo. But I have all the maps downloaded. I have plenty of preparation prior to that, so we can like wing it a little more. But if you're taking a group out, you should have driven the route via Google Earth at least once to see what it looks like, and then at the main parts of the trail, you at least research those to find out what kind of road conditions are, because Google Earth is pretty good about showing you like widths and things like road conditions, but it can't tell you everything. So definitely that, and the preparation prior to going. Okay. Because how many people you're going with too? Because if you, like me and her, we'll go out. Like we got stuck in a snowdrift the other day. we were up in Mammoth, and it was Christmas weekend. The snow was coming in. So I knew it was coming in at 4 o'clock. So I already looked at the weather. I had my little radar, so I had it set up, and then so I knew my timeline. So we went to June Lake. Everything was really beautiful up there. We was driving some back roads, and then I tried to go for the epic Christmas shot down this road that looked like I knew it was a little deep, but snow can be sticky or it can be fluffy, and as I was going, I'm like, this stuff is not fluffy at all. So I ended up stopping. We took our pictures, and I ended up having to I couldn't even turn around because on the side of the road it's like 4 feet deep, so it was too deep to turn around. So I just had to back up. But it was like a 3-hour recovery process solo by myself. But it wasn't that big of an issue because I had a winch and I had all the gear, and I had plenty of sleeping gear. So in case for some reason we didn't, I just wait till the morning. We was right after the storm in the car. Oh wow! So it'll be all right. I called my buddy in the morning, come get us.
Well, compared to what we did out in Nevada, that was nothing, huh?
Well, yeah. The Nevada was a good trip. And then that was kind of going to, this is another big thing too. I just watched, a video on YouTube the other day about those couple guys, and they just got like brand new Range Rovers, and this dude had his Dodge truck, and they were in Canada, and they were driving through the backcountry, and they didn't have any maps. Well, they had the map that was on the screen in the car, right? And it was just a road. It was a normal road, so it's not that big of a deal. The problem was like a storm was coming in, and they kept pushing as snow was dumping. This is Canada, so you're talking about the snow is going to dump and keep dumping and keep dumping. And they got to the point where they maybe should have turned around earlier. So and they just kept pushing to the point that they even had to leave one of the trucks. because
wow.
he got stuck and they couldn't go back for it.
Oh, geez.
So that's a big thing. So you gotta never be so committed. Like there's two types of weather condition, or two types of things that can really screw you up: extreme heat and extreme cold. So when it's extreme heat and it's extreme cold, you don't take a lot of risks.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Because if you take too many risks, then if it's if it says July and you're somewhere and it's like 70 degrees, you can try to get stuck. You can go up the hills, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Because if you get stuck there overnight, it's not that big of a deal. But if it's like you're in Canada and it's minus 30 and it's snow could dump 8 feet of snow at night.
Yeah.
You probably don't want to take any more risk than necessary.
Well, why would you even go out in those conditions?
I mean, if you want, like, I'm all for the adventure side, but you got to kind of know when to cut bait.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, so that's the point of the whole thing. Like in extreme heat and extreme cold, you don't, like for me at least, like I minimize the risk-taking activity because the consequences of a bad decision are far greater than if it's just 75 degrees and sunny outside. So
Right. Okay, so speaking of planning, what kind of gear, like recovery gear, like what are the necessities?
So if you are, well, let's see. I would say the basics, the very first thing you should always buy is a shovel. Because technically, no matter how stuck you are, you can always dig yourself out. Even if you're buried up to the
Technically?
Technically, if you logically think about it, if you're buried in the mud up to the windows, if you spend enough time, you can dig it all the way down to the tires and leave. So a shovel will get you out of, you have to have a shovel.
Okay.
Because if you don't have a shovel, then that'll solve a bunch of problems. Because as soon as the vehicle is, there's like different mire levels, meaning like how far the mud is up, or the snow, wherever the case, sand, whatever is up the vehicle, it increases the weight of the vehicle itself. So if the vehicle's just, the tires are just under mud, it's pretty much the same rolling weight as if you're on regular ground. But now if it's on the frame, you're dragging literally the whole weight of the vehicle. So a shovel helps, alleviate some of that pressure.
Yeah.
So a shovel is 100%. And then if you're a solo traveler, I definitely would say some sort of recovery boards, like Max Track things, and some that are strong, because once you dig and you don't have any good ground, and you can stuff branches and all that kind of stuff underneath, but at least with Max Track, it's a pretty solid platform you can use, and you stick it under. It helps you get a little bit of running room. Because we were, where we were at, like 10 years ago or something, we were going back from like Canyonlands in eastern Utah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a river called the Dirty Devil River, right? And it, my buddy Marshall, man, he's a little nut, but he drives like up, like the trail crosses the river, right? But there's like a little side shoot where he just goes up the river. He's like 100 yards up this river, and it's like what's the 80s? Everybody was dying in quicksand kind of place. That's the place where like you get trapped in quicksand. Like he says, like legit quicksand, yeah. And he ends up getting stuck in the river, and so we're like, okay, well, we got to do something about it. So so we send the second most capable truck with a locker at the time was my buddy Matt's, and we're driving so up the river. We get to the point where we're gonna kind of like crack the puzzle, and he parks on what looks to be like a sandbar, like that's in the river a little bit. And as we're shooting the breeze, saying, okay, if you hook up here, we do this, blah blah blah. We all look over his vehicle. We're like, man, I think your vehicle's sinking, bro. It was legitimately like getting swallowed by the earth. It was just slowly going down because it was like quicksand. It was just like silty, constantly wet stuff. Yeah, so it's bad. So what saved us was two things. One, we had something called like an X-Jack, which is looks like a big balloon that you put the filler apart, the balloon nozzle, onto the exhaust. And when you put it on the exhaust, what it does, the back pressure of the exhaust actually blows up the big balloon bag that's underneath your frame, and it will lift the truck up. And when it's got a big, like a 3 foot across footprint, excuse me. So in quicksand, it works really well. So that was my point with the Max Track. So once we got it actually lifted up, we were able to stick the tracks underneath it, and then we just jammed them out of there. And then for Marshall, we got super lucky because he had a winch, and there was a rebarb style ladder on the cliff that was like 50, 60 feet tall. But if you just pulled right on one rung of the ladder, it ripped the ladder out. So we ended up running like a tow strap like 20 feet into it. So it had a bunch of connection points and winched off it and got them out and moved. So
okay, wow.
Yeah, so Max Tracks are important for that reason. So if you're ever stuck in quicksand.
All right, so as a solo, you want Max Tracks,
and a shovel, correct. And then from there, that's the recover yourself. And then a lot of times when you're out there exploring, you'll be, if you go by yourself, you'll have other vehicles that come by, but they won't have any equipment. So for that, I always carry a kinetic rope, which is looks like a rope, but there's some elasticity to the kinetic side of it, right?
Yeah.
Because there's like 3 versions. There you have a kinetic rope, you have a snatch strap, and then you have just a straight tow rope. The big difference: a tow rope has no elasticity. It's used for pulling, like a static pull, no sort of kinetic energy. And then you have a snatch strap, which has the same kind of features as like a kinetic rope that has some elasticity to it. The problem with those are it's only about 20%, and if you pull on them, it's like 3 or 4 times the elasticity goes away, and you have to let it rest. I mean, you have to sit there and let it kind of come back together. It loses its kinetic properties.
Oh, really?
Versus a kinetic rope, you got a 30% stretch, so you have more kinetic energy, so a smaller vehicle can pull out a larger. And then also, it doesn't have that rest time. You use a couple minutes after a couple pulls, that's all it needs, and it goes back. So you carry one of those with 2 soft shackles, 2 hard shackles, and then a receiver hitch that has a shackle mount on it. Because a truck might come by that doesn't actually have a recovery point. Instead of having to do some jerry-rigged, off the frame somewhere, some crazy thing, you can actually just use the one you have, put in their trailer hitch, and save yourself.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. The thing with the Sprinter, though, is that I think we can, other than the shackles that you can, if you have a front bumper, I think what we kind of discovered out in Nevada was that really the best tow point was if you have the receiver hitch in the
correct. What's it called? The little
bumper.
screw in one.
Yeah. So.
Well, nothing's ever perfect. So
the Sprinter's not perfect?
As far as like every recovery situation, I should say. It's not textbook like you open up, you Google how to do recovery. There's a cartoon drawing of a guy hooking up to dedicated tow points that's stuck, and it seems super straightforward. They're never usually that straightforward. And that recovery point you're talking about is the one that screws in. And there's a weight rating on that, and you probably can find that. And I would say that it's better than nothing for sure, but there are some dangers to it.
Yeah.
Because if you for a static pull, it would be a little safer just because you're not putting any extra yank on it. But there is a point where that thing's, I would almost guarantee the weight of that point failing is before the weight of the vehicle. So if you really were yanking on it, those threads are going to rip out. Yeah. But if you're barely stuck in the ditch, you got a little tug to get out, that's probably your safest point where it's not going to screw up the...
Well, I was going to say, it's not like you're pulling the van from a dead,
it depends.
Stop, right? Maybe, because I would think someone else would be in the, in the Sprinter, and then they'd be pulling, and the person would be like also trying to go at the same time.
So that's a good point too. So it depends like what mire levels that we talked about before, like levels of how stuck it is. Is it just the wheels are stuck or spinning and you can't get any traction to move forward? Then that's no big deal. But now if it's actually like slid off the side of the road, it's on the frame itself on the dirt, you're dragging the entire weight of that van with those 10 threads.
Yeah.
For like but then also you got to think about, then there's once again, there's safety measures in recovery that you'll see them all over the place, things you should and shouldn't do. But what you also shouldn't do is be stuck on the side of the road for 5 days because you don't want to, take a little risk. You know what I mean? It's better being stuck. If you got 2 days worth of food and you're stuck for 5 days because you don't want to use that tow hook on the front, well, just there's danger involved. So how can I mitigate the danger?
Yeah.
Well, if I'm pulling forward, can I put my hood up? Can I put something over the line to keep it from moving? So if it does come off, can I attach something? So you got to think. It's better that than just being stuck.
Yeah.
That's how I see stuff.
All right.
Nothing's perfect.
You're the pro, not me.
Yeah. So.
So you got a shovel, you got a kinetic and a tow strap, and then max tracks or some type of traction boards. What else?
So you have the kinetic rope with your 2 soft shackles, 2 hard shackles, and then your receiver hitch for the vehicle that's going to drive by.
Why do you need a hard and a soft?
Because once again, hard shackles are good for dedicated recovery points. Like see the bumpers that have like a shackle mount on the front. So you use the actual hard shackle for it because it's made for that. Those things don't fail. I mean, the working loader is insane. If you break one of those, I mean, you really do. The bumper's going to come off where they break for the most part. So that's why you have the hard shackles. And then the soft shackles in case the person that's recovering you come by, or if they say the recovery's in a kind of wonky spot where you're not going to do off the front, off the side. You might have to do some other kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Untraditional.
Unorthodox.
Untraditional, link up point with the hook the line onto.
Yeah.
So that's why the soft shackle comes in.
Oh, okay.
So that if you're doing off sliders or you're doing it off something smooth, that you don't want to do sharp edges with those because it cuts the line.
Gotcha. Okay, so we got the soft and hard shackles.
Yep.
What else do we need?
That's really it For as far as recovery gear, I mean,
Okay.
you can always improve everything. I mean, it's like I tell people all the time for overland travel, there's a billion things you can get, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everything doesn't necessarily need it to start, but it just improves like, convenience or comfort or time.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it really does. Because I have a refrigerator now. I used to use like a little Coleman fridge for years.
Mm-hmm.
It worked fine. But now the refrigerator's easy because I can plug it in, put ice in it. I don't have to put ice in it anymore. So all those things are nice, but they're not necessary necessarily. So, yeah, that's it for recovery stuff. And then you can add a winch later on. Once you get a winch, you got to do like be pulleys or winch extension lines too, because all those things come involved. But there's this thing like a winch, all it does is allow you to get further stuck, because you're like, oh, you winch yourself that when you go further in, you winch yourself and you get stuck further in the woods.
Right.
Yeah. But solo, I mean, the winches saved me at least solo. I didn't use a winch for the first like 10 or 12 years. I tried.
Well, how many times do you get stuck in those 10 or 12 years?
So in my own vehicle, I've only been stuck by myself solo maybe 2 or 3 times, because that's normally more me mitigating risk, because I'm by myself. There's me and the wife, so I'm not gonna
going all crazy.
Because even with that, you got to think about too. The risk you take depends on the area you're in. So if you're on a trail that gets ridden 100 times a day by people, and you want to try some gnarly mud hole or something, and you get stuck, who cares? Somebody's gonna be by in a minute. Now, if you're in the middle of nowhere where somebody comes by once a week, maybe you don't take that risk. So that's kind of things you think about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's why I don't usually get stuck. I mean, we don't get stuck too often. On the Marine Corps, we were in those big LEVs. Things were 16 tons. Yeah, so they're big. And we were in like these rice paddy fields where it's just farmland, and also I probably did 10 recoveries a day.
Jeez.
For 7 months.
That's crazy.
Yeah, most of them were we didn't have kinetic ropes. We had it looked like ship ropes, like a big ship rope, but it's the same concept. It stretches. And then the other ones where one time I had, it was like one vehicle was stuck like 100 yards in, and we had like extension lines around it, and the other 3 vehicles that were pulling it all got stuck. So we had to like winch each other out to get the other. It was like 4 hours just winching each other to get it, just slowly leapfrogging yourself out. We had another platoon, and they actually got stuck for 5 days.
Holy cow.
They were digging and pulling they were stuck in the middle of like a big field, and 5 days just to get. They thought they were going to bring a helicopter in to pick the vehicle up and get it out. So I don't like getting stuck though. I find getting stuck annoying, because you waste like 3 hours. You're sitting there. I shoveled snow for 3 hours. I could have been driving around going, wow, ooh, look at that. There's an eagle. There's a deer. No, but I'm shoveling snow trying to not have a heart attack. So yeah, I hate getting stuck. I prefer not getting stuck.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I don't have that much experience in regards to like recovery. I just I try not to go by myself. Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes I do some gnarly stuff by myself, but at the same time, like what you're saying, it's like I'm not trying to get stuck.
Yeah.
The one time I did get stuck all by myself, I kind of was like, which was ironic because I just did the Storyteller Overland recovery course with Bill Burke.
Okay, right on.
Grand Junction. The name of the what they called it is escaping my mind, but I'll remember it like later on tonight at 2 a.m. and wake up. But anyways, like literally like 2 days after that, I got stuck for the very first time, and I was like, oh crap! And then of course, like I knew that I needed it. Of course, I didn't have a shovel. I didn't have traction board. Like all the stuff that you said I need, I didn't have.
And it makes it very difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so like I found like this big stick, and it helped me like dig the mud out from underneath the tires, and luckily it was on this reservoir bed, and so there's rocks and stuff, so I just like shoved
made like your own little road.
Yeah, and then I literally just rocked back and forth, and then eventually got out. But
so exactly, you adapted whenever it came. You didn't have the tools, but you figured it out.
Yeah,
it just makes it it's more time consuming. How long did it take you think from start to finish? Officially
1 minute. In real life, probably like 40.
Yeah. And it's a hard working 40, and then you got the thought in your head like, is this gonna work? I don't know if this is gonna work. This might work.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I had like this little thing where I just don't like, I don't want to, knock on wood, have to. So in the Sprinter van, we have the little
SOS button.
Button, like, please save me because all hell's broke loose kind of thing. And I didn't want to push it because then I'd have to wait for someone to come out, because I was literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
In Colorado. Anyways, long story short, I was like, I'm not pushing this button, and I'm just like, no.
You keep working, keep improving your position. So yeah, you do the right thing.
It's pretty crazy, but yeah.
It's like a learn. Like so you learn what you need and how to do things, and it's part of the process.
So out of those necessary pieces of equipment. Do you have any favorite brands for them?
Man, not really. So I mean, I've used
Kind of know a shovel's a shovel.
Yeah, shovel's a shovel. I mean,
like
so shovels you buy whatever size is going to fit the container you have. Some like how you can keep it, right?
Yeah.
The other thing about shovels though, I use like an e-tool, like a foldable shovel for most of my stuff, but it's small. So if I'm doing something where I'm gonna do a lot of digging, I wouldn't want a tiny shovel.
Yeah.
And the same thing with snow. If I go anywhere there is snow, I bring a snow shovel because digging out with snow. So depending, that's the type. And then as far as gear goes, man, it depends what it is. I mean, if a winch. So winches, I usually like go with the brand names because versus like some of the knockoffs, just because.
What are the brand names?
I mean, Warren's a pretty well-known name. They've been around forever. It's the testing process more than anything else. It's because they tested their gear versus some of these other companies that like knockoff. You have no idea what their testing process and verification of anything because the number that's written on the side of a winch is not necessarily the actual pulling power for a myriad of reasons, and it might be the pulling power for 5 seconds of it, and then after that the motor gets hot and it doesn't pull as strong.
Right.
But that, and then like for like my traction boards, they're just some Amazon traction boards I got for $100. I can't remember the name of them, and I've had them for. And I believe in. This is once again, and this is my theory on things. It doesn't have to be yours, but if I have to baby it to keep it functioning, then I don't want anything to do with it. So if I can't leave it out in the sun, if I can't mistreat it, and if it doesn't hold up, then I don't want it. It's not
okay.
So that's because my theory, because like, and also the thing you got to think about too, you'll say stuff that will say what's it called, lifetime guarantee, right? You're like, oh, that's rad. It's got a lifetime guarantee. Well, if it breaks, I'll just return it. Well, when it's gonna break, you're gonna be in the middle of nowhere. A lot of good is gonna do you trying to return something when you're stuck. Like you want it to function. That's like knives. I spend a lot of money on knives. Like my knives are like $500 to $1,000 normally, because they don't break. Because if it breaks on you, who cares if you can get a replacement, because you need it to function now. So with your gear, you want gear that's gonna work when you need it and not break. So that's the big one. And then I use Yankum ropes for my kinetic rope. Because I mean, there's
Yankum ropes.
Yankum ropes is kinetic. They're made up in Utah. Okay. So it's an American made company. It's good stuff. It gets used all the time. So I like those. And then let's see what else for my other gear. Yeah, my tracks are just regular old Amazon. I think I paid $100 for them. They were fine. Leave them out in the sun. I mean, they're not the same color they used to be, but I've had them for 5 years now, and they cracked maybe a little bit.
Yeah,
but
it's not too bad.
No, not for $100. And then for the shackles, I spend money on the shackles, so I'll use name brand shackles from. I'm trying to think the name of the company. They're like a shipping company, but they've been making shackles forever because the weight rating on it's actually legit. The metal's legit versus if you buy some like knockoff overseas brand, you have no idea if the metal they used or the what's stamped on the side, and that's kind of the stuff you got to look out for. What
do you think about Factory 55?
They have good stuff. Yeah, the American-made company, they test their products. It's the testing. That's you can see what they test. They put out a lot of literature about recovery, so they follow through like the whole gambit. They're not just somebody that showed up and stamped their name on something else. They actually follow the whole gambit.
So it's a legit company?
Yeah, they're legit. Yeah,
okay.
Legit.
What other legit companies are out there? You got Warren, Factory
55. I like my roof racks, Front Runner. I've been using those guys forever. Yeah, they make good stuff.
That's what comes with our sprinters.
The Front Runners,
with our storytellers.
Yeah, I like their gear's really good. I mean. Because even like roof racks, there's a static rating and there's like a moving rating for all that stuff, right? Now, once again, this is only me, so you don't have to take my advice. I don't pay attention to any of that stuff. If it breaks while I'm using it, then that's what it is. I loaded down what I need. If you can't handle it and it breaks, then I'll buy some other gear that can handle the weight. Because a lot of times, and I like Front Runner. I mean, I have a full size spare on it, or I have 10 gallons of water in like a road shower. I have 12 gallons of fuel. I'll have a Pelican box full of spare fluids and parts, and then I have a wood bag. That all goes on top. And it rocks it.
Wood bag for like firewood?
Yeah. So years ago, I figured out that if you ever try to strap down firewood, it's a pain in the butt because it's like little logs, and you try to crank your little ratchet strap. If one piece of the Jenga comes out, the whole damn thing comes apart, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up buying just a big canvas burlap bag that you just throw all the wood in, zip it up, and then strap that down, and then don't have to worry about it. Okay. And it stays relatively dry too if it rains.
Gotcha.
So that helps.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so I have it's made by Garb. It's like a trash bag that you attach. I think you remember I had it when we were out in Nevada.
How you like it?
I like it a lot. I think with the Garb one compared to like Trasharoo, I mean, that's basically what it is. You're going to trash it because it's, within like a year or whatever.
They don't last.
Canvas or whatever they're made of isn't that.
It starts dry rotting pretty quick.
The UV gets to it real quick. But with Garb, I'm pretty satisfied with it. Plus, it's like a little bit bigger, and it actually has straps inside where you can on the bundle of wood and like all that stuff.
Put it like inside the trash bag?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Okay. So you can actually have trash on the bottom, and then you can secure your wood on top. And I don't know. It's pretty cool. I mean, to each their own, but it is pretty expensive like everything else. But
well, you get what you pay for. Like the trash route, like I have a trash route because I think someone gave that one to me. Mm-hmm. I think our buddy got it at a show or something. But I think they're about $65-$70. It works. It's not going to last you multiple years.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a lot of versatility unless you like add packs to it. It's pretty much a bag you put trash in. Which would I end up? Oh man, that's like the thing with recovery. Oh, we talk about recovery gear and where you put stuff. You got to make sure your recovery gear is accessible, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want it at the very bottom of the floorboard when you're sliding off the side of a cliff. You want it kind of outside. So like I use the trash. I just throw my recovery straps and ropes and stuff in there. That helps out a lot too. But the problem is just one big. And I end up, what I'm doing? Because it's got some Molly stuff on it, so I end up like putting a shovel pouch or something, like a little trash bag pouch.
Oh, okay.
The only problem with the damn thing is you try to put like an interior liner trash bag in it, but you never just throwing trash on top of the trash bag, and then at the end you just kind of dump the whole thing out. So
yeah.
I don't know who's cracked that problem yet. But.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for changing tires? I mean, you know what we're rolling with. Like I got over 10K in my van. So if I'm, out in the middle of nowhere, pop a tire, I got to change it.
So ideally, right, you have at least one spare. And then if you pop a tire, then you have no spares. So if you're on day 2 of your adventure and you pop a tire,
you're just heading back?
I mean, you can keep going, but there's some risk involved, right? If you're especially by yourself, or if everybody, the good thing with like rolling with the same type of vehicles, you guys all have the same type of tire. So worst case scenario, you can like, hey, I need to borrow your tire, bro. And you just swap, you put somebody else's spare on your vehicle to get you out. So even if you are out now, you don't have to we don't have to kink the entire trip, or you don't have to bail out because other tires will fit your rig. And the other way to, I used to carry 2 tires too all the time. My old Discovery, I did Discovery 2 before, Land Rover, and I carried 2 because, one, for that reason, you pop 1 tire, now you have no spare. And then 2, what happened a lot of the times, like when you're driving down like the river, the dry river beds, creek beds, how it's nice soft sand. Well, around the sides of those things, there'll be like jagged, sharp rocks, and it happens all the time to people. So they're having a good time. They're hauling butt down the river bed, and they catch the side of that sharp rock, and it takes out both tires on one side.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, that happens quite often actually. So that's why ideally 2 spares are the best if you have room for them. And the other way to kind of improve your safety without having to carry another tire is like a tire repair kit, which is like the beef jerky stuff to plug holes. So I usually try to not to change the tire until the tire's totally shot. I try to plug it until it's freaking dead, and then after that, then I'll change it, because then my theory at least is that if I damage it again, at least I'm damaging our tire that's damaged. I'm not damaging my good tire, so I'm saving it for as much as possible.
Okay, that makes sense. Never thought of it like that, but yeah. I mean, if that one's messed up, just plug it up because it's messed up anyways.
So be screwed up later on.
Speaking of tires and stuff, if you're packing, 98 to 10,000 plus pounds to air down the tires for like off-road stuff and washboard roads, what do you recommend?
So
I'll say that the front tires
what do you guys normally
on the freeway,
run?
is
what do you guys normally
40.
Run?
I want to say it's 49.
Okay.
Oh man. It's either 40 or 49.
Okay.
And then the rear is 70.
70, which is all the weights in the back. So what you're looking for, the problem with air down, it's not a I'll give you the standard side and what the standard answer is, right? Because every rim and tire size is different. So if you have, let's say you have a tire and rim combination that you have a very little sidewall, like say it's very low, maybe 1 or 2 inches, because you have big rims on small off-road tires, you really can't air down. Because if you air down, what happens if you hit a rock or anything on the trail, your rim is not protected by the tire. It just ends up cracking a rim and you're getting it flat. So your tires, overall tire size and the size of your sidewall depends how much you can air down. And what you want to try, the goal is from airing down essentially to making your footprint, instead of just a little tiny footprint, to expand it more to give you more traction. And also tires are the first step in your suspension. Because if not, the washboard roads are the worst.
I know.
They will, and they'll like every bolt inside. They'll loosen everything. So I mean, I think I've had more trail damage from washboard roads, like knocking things off, than I have like hitting stuff.
Jeez.
Just because like I lost my roof rack, my lights one time.
Oh jeez.
I lost like stuff comes and screwed inside the hood because it's just a constant vibration. So by airing down, it does help with that significantly. But with you guys, I mean, below 30 probably gets a little squishy for most of your tires. Like look at the size you have on your vehicle. Like you have a pretty decent sidewall for the size tire you can run on the van.
Yeah, those are I'm running 17-inch rims.
Okay, see that's why.
Yeah.
See, the smaller rim the better.
Yeah.
For that very reason.
Yeah.
Because you gives you another inch, and it's important when it comes to like absorb. Because if you're going 15, 20 miles an hour and you don't see like a rock or something, and you hit that with not a lot of sidewall and you air it down, you're going to crack a rim, and then you're done. So that helps out a lot. But you're saying like in the 30s, probably 35 in the back is enough to make it comfortable for driving on most trails, and then 30 in the front. But then if you say you find yourself really getting stuck, you can air down all the way to in the 20s. The problem is now is you're going to have a tire that's really flat as far as like the footprint, which will give you a lot of traction. But also you have to worry about rolling a bead at that point, like the tire coming off the rim. But that would normally only happen if you put like side pressure on it. So if you're in sand, you air that thing down as low as you can go, like 15. You want you can just have a flat tire. It doesn't really matter. To keep it from rolling off the rim, you just keep going in a straight line. When you start turning and putting side pressure, that's when you pop the bead off tires when the pressure's low. Same thing with getting pulled. But if you air down, you can usually get yourself out of stuff just by airing down, like significantly down. So if you roll around at 25 psi and then you're stuck in sand or mud, if you air down to 10 just to get you out of the hole and the air back up, that's enough a lot of times to self-rescue too.
Okay. So if you're aired down, let's say 30 in the front and 35 in the rear, how fast can you go?
Well, it depends on. So there's two problems
on
with
a washboard
roads. You can have 45, 50 miles an hour. You're fine. The problem is it's turning. So with lower air pressure tires, when you see like vehicle rollovers on like police chases or any kind of stunt stuff, usually they're linked to low air pressure in tires. Because what happens to sidewalls, instead of staying rigid, they flex, and now the rim and the sidewall are not in the same spot anymore, which causes like a tripping motion that flips cars over. So the same thing can happen to you in these vans and like in any off-road vehicle.
So if you're taking like a left or right hand turn, like how fast is probably the max that you should do being aired down like that?
I mean, for you guys, if you're a little heavier, I mean, at 35, 45 miles an hour, that would be like the fastest I would go, like really doing like hard turns, like, on dirt roads and stuff. Yeah. You can slide and stuff, but the problem is, if that sidewall buckles, it's going to pop the bead. And then it depends what tire comes off, whether it's your front or rear. It could be it could be a bad time. So I usually 45 miles an hour on like low air pressure. And then also there's another thing people say that the reason why you don't want to drive on air down tires is because the footprint's larger now. So it creates more friction on the surface is what you're going for. But that also creates heat. So if you're somewhere like on pavement, and you're driving a long time with a lot of friction, it's going to create the heat and it's going to wear down the structure of the tires a lot faster. But like you're saying, like the other day when we were in Nevada, it was what, -5?
Yeah.
So it's -5 degrees. And so even if you're aired down driving on the pavement for 15 miles, it's not there's no heat's none enough heat's going to be generated to tear down the tires.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't know. Anyways, I won't say my weird joke, but okay, so that's good advice. What do you have like a favorite brand and style of tire for off-road? Because like the Storytellers come stock with the BFGs KO2 all-terrains. I know that's generally a good tire, but is there something like when you upgrade and people want to get new tires and rims, like is there something better out there for off-roading?
So right now I run Radar tires for a couple reasons. One, they hit me up and said, "You want to try our tires out and run them?" I'm like, "Okay, sounds good." And they've been really good tires. They have because I usually run only mud, like straight mud. I run mud tires, doesn't matter. Okay. Just because I like the extra grip.
What brand though?
I've used quite a few over the years, so it depends on the brand. So every brand's a little different for a couple reasons. So mud tires for me has always been my favorite. The tires I have now are like a hybrid, so they're not quite as aggressive as a mud tire, but they're called a multi-terrain. They're a little more aggressive than like an all-terrain, right? The benefit from a tire like that is you get less highway noise. if that's your thing. Like you don't like, the wah sound of mud tires. You get more mileage. I think these are up to 45,000 miles.
Oh, wow.
They're warranty too. And then, yeah, that's the big part about it. The downside is you get a little less grip, like in mud, because they're not super aggressive. So, and before that, I had my last set of tires. I had some Cooper STT Pros. They were good tires. They were the mud terrain version. The only thing I didn't like about them was the sound. They probably were a little louder than the tires I have now, but I don't care about the sound. I kind of like the wah 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 wah. And then, I got like 17,000 miles out of those things because the rubber's really soft. Oh. Yeah, so they grip really well, but they didn't. I mean, I think I ended up swapping them at 20,000 miles because the tread was gone. And then before that, I had some Goodyear MTR Pros, or no, Goodyear MTRs. They have two versions. They had the older version and the newer version. So I have both of them. Those are really good tires too. They lasted fairly well. But once again, those are like mud terrain tires. They work good. So I prefer mud terrain over anything else just because I like the grip. And then I also did a set of Federal Guillergues or something. That's what French is. I don't know what the hell they are. They're Federal tires. I was doing I was making a YouTube video saying like, what's the cheapest tire you can buy that hold up? And I bought those and they worked really well. They didn't do so well in like wet pavement on the streets. They're a little sketchy. But as far as off road, they did fine. Okay. So but mud tires are my preferred. But if you don't.
What about something that's like all terrain? Because like for me, I'm driving a lot of highway, but then I'm driving days on off road, and but
the KO2s are. I've never personally ran KO2s, the BF Good wrenches, but I have tons of friends that do. I don't see a lot of flats from them. So that's always, I'll usually judge that a lot of times. If I don't see a lot of flats, it means they can take some driver mistakes and not punch hole. Like there's another company, there's the Falcons or something. that I kept running across. It seems like they get more flats than normal because if you make a mistake, because you're going to hit a rock by accident, your tire should be able to take it. But then also it depends on the ratings like E, C, like how thick it is. The sidewall. You guys are probably at least
I think
E-rated.
Z.
Yeah, you guys are, because you have to
light truck or something like that.
Yeah, you guys gotta have a really thick sidewall, so that helps. So if sometimes people try to get away with running like C-rated tires, which are lighter than like an E-rated, but the problem is then they're not as puncture resistant, but they're lighter, so the gas mileage is better and all kind of stuff.
Is Z the toughest?
I think Z's it's up there because it's like C and then there's E and then I don't know what the hell the other ones are, but yeah, Z seems like I think they're the heavy, like it's the real thick sidewall. So
like
you need
the further down the alphabet you go, the tougher it is.
The further you go, closer. The tougher it gets.
Do they make a double Z?
I don't know if they make a double Z. They should if they don't.
I know, right? Okay. So, but you don't have one specific brand to be able to fit the all around.
No, like saying the radar tires I have right now are really good tires. I mean, I would recommend them to somebody. The Cooper tire, I mean, they're good. It's the tread life that gets me, man. Because if you drive, I put a freaking 1,000 miles just to go to and from a place, and you do that 4 or 5 times. Yeah. I mean, that's like half your. If you're only getting 20,000 miles out of a tire, that's half your time right there. So I mean, tread life is a big one. But you're going to get that more out of your all-terrain tires than you would like your mud tires.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, mud tires they're good, but they have less surface area.
Yeah.
Because they're mud and they wear down faster. But
okay.
And the rubber compounds.
I think the ones that I think the tires that come with the Storyteller are pretty decent.
What are they? The KO2s?
Yeah, but I don't know tires and stuff.
I mean, they're all terrains. There's like the hybrid. Just get some freaking mud tires on there. Screw it.
Mud tires?
Yeah, like
no,
mud.
I don't want that.
No, yeah, you do.
Oh.
You don't know you do. Once you get one set,
no,
and once you get the one set.
I used to have a YJ, and we had.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you had the mud tires, the BF Goodwrench mud tires? What
man, I can't remember what my ex put on there. He I can't remember. Anyways, I was I'm not into that stuff, and he just did whatever he wanted. But
you like
I know they were mud tires, and it was just so loud.
Wah, 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 wah,
it was just like, oh my god, and like you couldn't talk. It's like, and then you had to blast the radio so loud, and then it just made everything else louder, and it was just, and then you're just like that vibration. And you're like,
they grip so good, and they dig.
That's just my personal preference, but
and that's kind of like. And that's why I would say like that the radar, that hybrid kind of multi-terrain style, it's more aggressive than an all-terrain. It's not as aggressive as a mud terrain, so it doesn't quite dig as well. But you don't get the road noise, and you get more miles out of them. So that's a big thing.
Okay. So for someone who is waiting for their Storyteller, has zero experience of overlanding, other than just driving on the highways and maybe some gravel roads and whatnot. But they're going to get their storyteller, and they want to go out and explore. Give them some tips on,
Like what's a good starting point? Let's see.
If you can only give one tip to them, what would that be for a brand new person?
Would be start slow, and then expand as your miles expand. So the more miles you have off on a trail, the more difficult you can go. And then that would say like you don't try to go do the Rubicon your first day solo. Yeah, learn your abilities and know your abilities. So that's the main thing. So it depends on every person. So just as long as you know your abilities, if you're say you're a nurse, that means you have medical training and stuff. So you're a little more prepared than a person that's not a nurse. Or if say if you're a mechanic and you get one, or you worked on vehicles your whole life, your experience level is a little more. So your starting point would be a little different than somebody that has like zero vehicle experience at all. Start like national parks first. Just know your experience level and then build it, and then when you build it, then you can expand like where you can go and what you can do.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk tools here for a second. So what kind of tools should you have when you roll out? Because we talked about recovery stuff, but in regards to like, let's say a van breaks, I don't know, engine breaks, whatever. What kind of tools, what's the bare necessities for that?
And this comes from not having the tool and then figuring it out later. That's where all my experience comes from. Like needing the tool and not having it with us, and like, well, let's add that to the roster. So you need like a socket set, like a basic socket set, like standard and metric, and then also you need one that's short and deep, because we had my buddy Marshall had his Land Cruiser. He ended up snapping an output shaft in the front, and we had socket set, but we didn't have a deep socket set to undo his skid plate. So mental note, make sure you have deep socket sets.
Okay.
So like a good socket set that has metric and standard, and then you need to have specialty. So for you guys, your rear differential is actually to take off the cover. It's this Wazoo Star, like I think it's like, I don't remember if it's a male or female pattern, but it's some this you got to have have a certain socket for it.
Yeah.
Because we had a van that cracked the diff cover, hit it on a rock, and didn't. Which is not that big of a deal, because all you have to do is take the cover off, bend it back flat, scrape off the old gasket, put some gasket sealer on, put it on, let it set, and then fill it back up, and you're good to go. The problem was we didn't have that tool. So there was no taking it off, and we were going to try to like vice grip it off or something, like, do some. But it ended up, it would have been bad. I think we ended up stripping it out probably and still wouldn't have got it off. So one other buddy, Adam, he ended up just... there was like a 1 inch gap from the cover to the housing, and we just, once all the fluid drained out, we just filled it full of sealant, let it sit, and then once it set, it could hold fluid, and we filled it up, and then we got them out with that way.
Okay.
So the specialty tools that are for each vehicle has their own specialty tool for certain parts. Make sure you have those.
Okay.
And that for the diff, that's a special one for your guys' vans.
Yeah.
And then fluids. That's the other big one. You should have river fluid that your van uses. You should have a couple quarts of it.
Should have what?
A couple quarts of fluid, like your power steering fluid. Your what else?
I thought you said river fluid. I'm sorry.
No, not river
like,
fluid.
Wait, what?
Power steering fluid and like your brake fluid, all those things.
Okay.
You should carry that, because that's another thing. Sometimes your guys' power steering.
Yeah.
We're
prone, but I think that I haven't seen anything in regards to knock on wood for the entire community where their power steering hose pops off and then they're kind of stranded because it's a beast to turn. But I mean, I have power steering fluid in my van with extra clamps. But
yeah, the clamps are the big one, because I think we've had in our van trips we've had at least 2, maybe 3 pop off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's like 150. I mean, probably the number of vehicles going out. So like 1 out of 60, I guess that happens too. I guess.
Oh, I don't know the stats on it.
My rough stats of what we've taken out and that hadn't happened is like 1 out of 60. It happens too.
So like once every trip then.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Wow. It pops off where we know it. That's not that big of a deal now. So it's just the clamp that, I don't know if the clamp gets stressed or what it is, but it just fails and pops off, and then the fluid leaks out. So it's not that big of a deal if you have the fluid to replace it and you pop it back on, change the clamp. But that's a good thing to have. Extra fluids, and then same thing for the sealants, like you said with the diff issue. Just generic, heat temperature sealants for different covers, and then old JB weld in case you crack something. Put a hole in your gas tank, you can let it. You can JB weld it close and that kind of stuff.
Okay. So like a Phillips and flathead screwdriver.
Phillips flathead with screwdrivers, like basic screwdriver set, sockets. What else are we talking about? Sockets, screwdriver sets. A serpentine belt's not a bad idea to have either, because those things can break. We had a trip before where one buddy, second day we're leaving. I think his compressor or something locked up in his vehicle, and it snapped his brand new belt. But luckily, he had a new belt, so my other buddy Matt was he's good at mechanic stuff, and he swapped it out.
Oh, okay.
So he fixed it. It didn't kill the trip. So if not, that would have been a whole day just by having a $15 belt. By not having that $15 belt, would have killed a whole trip.
Yeah.
So for
almost feels like you need a recovery vehicle behind you, just jam packed full of parts and tools.
Like saying, like I was with a mechanized unit for 20 years, and that's what we essentially had.
Yeah.
Because stuff breaks, but you don't have to have. Like I just have a Pelican case that I keep it all in. That has bolts, fluids, and some extra fuses and things like that, because fuses blow too, and then clamps, and then a bunch of different types of sealant in case things get a hole in it. It just man, do you have to carry all that stuff? No, but just know that if you don't carry that stuff, sometimes you might have to cut your trip short.
Yeah.
Or if you go by yourself, you should carry it, just because if not, you'll be waiting for rescue.
Yeah, right. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the medical equipment. So what do you think every person should have for medical equipment? You
should bring whatever medical equipment you are able to use. So let's think about this. Let's say if you might have, let's say you have like a thing to do a tracheotomy, you have all this kind of wazoo stuff, but you don't know how to use it. So what the hell does it matter anyway? So you're like, oh, don't worry, I'm prepared. I have A, B, C, and D. Okay. Do you know how to use any of that stuff? No. Well, then what good is it? So main thing is you can do, and basic level first aid classes you take are very important when you're doing this. It's just the first aid stuff, like stop bleeding kind of things, which would be something like pressure, because even it doesn't take a lot of skill set to know how to put a pressure dressing on. You just need a packet full of gauze and then some sort of wrap to stop the bleeding. Those types of things. That's easy. It's the learning curve, super easy on that. So any like large bandage types for bleeding, and then tourniquets are big. In case there's a vehicle rollover, because you can have a femur snap through and cut an artery. That can happen. Somebody can pinch their leg. Someone fall down a trail hiking. You can get an arterial bleed. It can happen, and you only have a couple minutes. It depends on how hard their heart's beating, how hydrated they are. You can bleed out fast. So a tourniquet's something you can stop, and you put that on. Anybody knows doesn't take that long to figure out how to use it. So a tourniquet's good. Basic. Now here's the other one. Basic medication, like stuff for upset stomachs, for headaches, things like that. Benadryl for allergic reactions. Because most of the time, you're not going to have a broken femur or someone's bleeding out. I mean, that's the what ifs. But the most thing that happens is you're going to burn yourself on the campfire picking up the skillet. You're going to get stung by a bee, and your freaking face is going to swell up a little bit, or you just got upset stomach because you didn't cook the chili enough.
Okay.
So basic medications like that, and then bandages.
I just thought of something. I'm kind of all over the place today, but you didn't mention an axe.
An axe? An axe for chopping stuff out of the way? I would put that in the realm of the snow shovel. So if I'm in an area where, and you guys actually, this plays a little more in play than it would me, because I'm not quite as tall. So if I'm in the desert, I wouldn't worry about bringing an axe. I mean, I may a hatchet just cut firewood, but as far as recovery gear, but if I was going through the forest and stuff where you have trees that fall and you have low hanging branches, because we did one up near Bridgeport one time where I had to change routes because the route we were on was washed out, and the route I had to take us through was through trees. And usually for me, I'm just going, who cares? I don't that big, but you guys got a couple feet on me.
Yeah.
So luckily, somebody had a chainsaw and they just trimmed a couple of the limbs. So having some sort of sawing device is not a bad idea if you're somewhere with forest, whether it's be the axe or saw or actual chainsaw. You want to get after it. But if you have a chainsaw, that's another problem too. You get a chainsaw, you need chaps, because you need the actual things. Because if you screw up with a chainsaw, you're going to cut your leg off.
Yeah.
And then you're not 5 minutes from
then
the
you
yard.
got to use that tourniquet.
Then you got to use that tourniquet, and then everybody's got to run around in circles and scream.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of time.
Okay. Sorry, I kind of jumped.
No, that's good. Yeah, it's good though. Yeah. So I would put a saw in one of the categories like snow shovel. Or saw or a hatch or an axe, depending on where you're going.
Yeah,
bring it with you for sure.
Okay. Anything else on the medical?
The medical side. Yeah.
What about an IV or assuming that you can do it?
Yeah. Well, that goes back to what can and can't do. If you have somebody that's in your group that knows how to put an IV in, then for sure, 100%. But if you don't know, it doesn't do anybody any good. The main things the preparation side, having a way to send for help is a big part of it to get them out of there. Yeah, I mean,
What about like electrolytes and stuff like that?
to replenish those, like food wise. So because you have a couple conditions that are not like traumatic, as far as like accidents that can happen. One, you can have like hypothermia when it's up to like -5 degrees,
Yeah.
and then you
Felt
can
that.
and then you can have like heat exhaustion, heat stroke. So no one have a little preparation prior, knowing the signs and symptoms of both and what causes and what doesn't cause them. That's a big thing, and that doesn't cost you anything other than a little bit of a Google school. Because if you have heat exhaustion, it's not that big of a deal. You can recover from heat exhaustion, but if you go to heat stroke, that's like they have to bring a helicopter in to come get you and bring you back. If not, your brain's gonna cook. So no one in advance. My coffee pot made some noise.
It's talking to us.
I think it did. No one in advance, like the signs and symptoms of heat exhaustion and heat stroke are really, really big for keeping somebody alive. So
Yeah.
just knowing that if someone's hasn't been eating, it's like a lot of times in the heat you don't want to eat, but you have to eat. If you don't eat, like you're saying, the electrolytes, your minerals, you'll drink water. It's easy to make a person drink water when it's really hot because they're thirsty. But eating is not that natural. But you can pee out all your minerals and you're just water, and that's not enough. You need to have food too, so that can help lead to those problems.
Yeah. Well, that kind of segues us into my next question, or actually topic of discussion, and that's survival skills. Like, what do you think everyone should know before they roll out?
How to make a fire. How to make a fire is a big one, because fire can bring you warmth, fire can bring you light, it can bring you single, it can bring you protection. Fire's a big one. It can keep boil water. So if you know how to make a fire in a couple different ways, everybody should know how to make a fire with a lighter, essentially. But even with that, it can be challenging because the wind. You try to light a fire in the wind, it's not super easy. And if you don't have gasoline or some other kind of propellant, sometimes if you didn't set the fire up properly, it might not be that easy to light.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big fan. Like, I'm a one light walk away. If you have to sit there and baby the fire, then you didn't build it right. So my theory is, if I should be able to walk up, light one spot, and turn my back on it, like cool guys don't look at explosion style, And then
I don't know anyone who could do that. What's the trick to do that?
The trick is how you build it. So you have tinder, kindling, and then fuel wood. It's like your 3 types of wood, right? So your tinder is like your small stuff. It's like your pine straw, like little small twigs. So you make something called like a bird's nest, like like a little baby bird's nest, with your tinder, and that's going to be your main fire ignition point. Then after that, you have something called your kindling, which is like your smaller sticks, like your pinky size, that go on top of it. So you build it in a process where your fire starts at the bottom, and then goes its way up. So now that you have, then the fuel wood's like stuff like.
Ooh.
Oh, excuse me, like wrist size, fuel wood. So that's like you build it in like in a teepee style. Depends on like where you're at too. So if you're in snow, you need to make like a platform or a wet ground. So like a river, but imagine like you make it like a Huckleberry Finn style, like river raft. You put that on the ground, you build your fire on it, because it does 2 things. One, it keeps the moisture of the ground getting into the wood, and then 2, it makes a nice cold bed after everything's rocking and rolling. So yeah, and then you build a teepee where you start. You take the time to make your nice little bird's nest with your kindling, with your tinder, and then you put your kindling on top and your big fuel wood, and you angle it away from the wind so it's not blowing directly into it, but still feeding it, and then you light it and you walk away.
I'm gonna try that. I want to see this. Yeah. I want to see next time you're out there.
All right.
I want to see it. I feel like that's super hard to do.
It's not too bad. And then if that's with using a lighter, and then if you want to use something like you see the what's this stuff? The flint, and you ever seen that they use that and they throw the sparks and they start the fire, which it works. It does work, and you can. It's not a bad idea because it's not really as prone to being susceptible to water, not functioning like a lighter can. So we taught guys to use those, because you have on those rods, you have a ferro rod, and then you actually have magnesium, which is the stuff that burns. Have you ever heard like car fire? I think it's the old Volkswagens had magnesium blocks in the engines, and when they got on fire, they had to put them out in a different way because they can explode with water and fire and stuff.
Wow.
But magnesium burns really hot, so you have the ferro rod that throws the spark, and then you have that magnesium block. Well, you can't really just say you made that tinder bundling. This is going to be what you're going to use to start the fire. If you just try to scrape the magnesium into the bundling, it's all sporadic in there and it doesn't really do any good. So what you actually do is you collect it onto like a piece of paper or a leaf or something, and then you concentrate into an actual pile. So now when you pull the spark, and when you pull the spark too, you don't want to throw the spark at it with your hand, because what you'll have a tendency to do is actually knock over your wood. You want to draw it back, so it throws the spark, but you don't have the propensity to knock over the actual And then, so that's how to use that. And then you can use, we taught when I worked down in Mexico for a year with the Mexican Marines, teaching survival. We actually did bow and drill style, where you actually have,
Oh, you're talking about
like that. Yeah. You do the hand drill or like a bow drill.
Oh,
it works. The woods have to be, the wood, your stick wood needs to be harder than your board you're using, and you have to have a nice little split down the bowl you're making so it gets air, and then you have to have a nice collection piece for the hot embers but it works. But once again, that goes to, you have that set up, but prior to doing that part, you need to have your fire already built. So once you get your little, your embers going, you can transfer into your bird nest, put that into the fire, and then it starts.
Jeez.
But so
okay, that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and it's not that reliable. So unless you do it all the time.
I've watched Naked and Afraid. Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, it's not that reliable. So having a couple different types of lighters is a good idea. You have a regular like cigarette bic lighter, and then you can have like a blowtorch style one, the windproof ones. Like having different ways to start a fire is a good idea. Okay. Because the fire can save you in a lot of ways.
Okay, so you need to know how to make a fire. Right. What else?
Have some sort of plan for. Well, I've talked so much, I forgot what's the original question.
Oh, if a person brand new is going out by themselves for survival, what should they do? Have know kind of thing.
How to make a fire, and then how to purify water, collect water, that type of stuff. So there's different ways. So if you get water from like a creek or a river or a lake, you can drink it. But there's a possibility there's what do you call that bacteria that's in water? It's like from animal fecal matter stuff. Yeah. It's bad news when you drink. Yeah. What's the word I'm looking for?
Does it start with a G?
G? What is it?
No.
I don't know.
I can't remember, but I know what you're talking about. It'll mess you up.
Yeah, it'll mess you up a bit. Yeah. That's going to bug me now. But anyway, so you can't just drink it straight. You have to do there's a couple options. You can purify it through heat, which is like boiling it, right? It kills all the bacteria inside. So instead of drinking live bacteria, you just drink the dead bacteria. Delicious. And then the other way you can have, you can distill it, meaning you'd have to boil the water to the point where it evaporates and collects and, gathers in a different vessel. Yeah. And so that some reason, science, but the bacteria can't float up with the water vapor. So it's all stays in the pot. So you're good. And then the other way is purification through like filtration, where you actually have a life straw or some sort of filtration device to actually purify the water. So that's
what do you
options.
think about those little UV lights? Do those actually do
anything? They kill bacteria. That's one way they like in some African countries where they filter the water, they purify the water, I should say, is by taking like the little half-liter bottles, put them on a corrugated roof, and let them sit in the sun all day. There's a time, off the top of my head, I don't remember it, but depending on how much water it is, there's a certain amount of time it can be exposed to UV light, just the sun itself, and it actually kills the bacteria inside that makes it drinkable. So it's the same thing. It's the same concept with the light, but instead of using the sun, you use the little light.
What do you think about so I saw this on a TV show where this dude basically collected and like washed off the rocks or whatever and basically made like a little filter that mimicked like a charcoal filter. Does that actually work?
Well, that was one of the things we taught, where you start with big filtration down to small filtration, which your last step would be charcoal. So the idea goes through like grass first that gets the big particles. Because you're dumping it out of a dirty river with a bunch of debris in it, and then it goes down to rocks, and then after the rocks it goes down to sand, and after sand it goes down to charcoal. Technically, it's a charcoal filter, and it should catch the majority, but who knows what's in the sand and dirt so much. Yeah. See, it's the charcoal is supposed to be the last step. It
seems like you're making the water dirtier.
The first three are not for bacterial purposes. That's to filter out impurities in the water, like dirts and like bigger objects. The charcoal is the idea. Charcoal is the idea is it filters out the harmful bacteria side. That's the idea. But even that, if it's not perfectly sealed, you're going to get water on the other way. You can, it's in like a permeable cloth is how you kind of set it up. So but then you have excess water. The other way people do sometimes is you force it through, like using if you can force it through the actual charcoal where it actually has to go through it, that does purify the water. It gets rid of the stuff. It's a charcoal filter. It's the same as if the stuff you buy at the stores. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
So that does work. But my preferred method really is boil. You can strain it with your T-shirt just to get the big junk out, boil it so it's drinkable, and you just have to drink a little chunky water, make it like a soup. It's like a soup.
Little stew.
Yeah, it's like a stew. It's like a river stew. But yeah, so ability to purify and clean water, know how to do that's a big one, and then realize like shelter, because you have like the rule of threes, 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, and then
3 weeks?
yeah, you can live 3 weeks without food.
Wow.
It can be longer and
I
shorter.
miss 1 meal and I feel like I'm gonna die.
Yeah, because your stomach. You can live like some people. Like I could probably live longer than you. I have a little more reserves, but yeah, you absolutely can live 3 weeks without food.
Oh my God, you know what? That just gave me a great excuse. I'm going to plump myself up, and when people say, oh man, you're fat, I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to survive longer than you.
It's survival status. Yeah, so then, so you have water, so the other part is food. So food, I mean, if you're in the United States, the chance of you being lost and need to survive more than 3 weeks is obviously pretty low. I mean, you're really got to be poorly. They must not be looking for you at that point. If you're still out there after 3 weeks, because most rescues, once they're initiated, it's like 24 hours and they find you. So, but yeah, the other to like food. I mean, most food you're going to carry in your van anyway, and you have prepared food that's shelf life. I have a little container that's in my truck all the time that I don't eat. It's just like cans of soup that have like 2 years expiration date. It's not my lunch meal when I go camping. It's just in case we're out there past our initial return time. And then I'm also always loaded. I'm always loaded for bear, 100%. I prefer my truck loaded all the time. I never really unload it. I just sweep out the trash, take out the trash, and then leave it the way it is. I keep blankets and stuff in all the time because if I want to go out, the unloading process to me at least is the most annoying part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So make sure you have food still like stored, like prepare food, because if you want to catch food while you're out, if you're a hunter and you have a gun and you understand the process of hunting, then yeah, you for sure can harvest some sort of I hate that word harvest. You can kill some sort of deer. Yeah. Or some sort of other animal, but making traps, and we did make traps like bird traps and like snares, because you have like principles of trapping like tangle, mangle, dangle, strangle. So you're trying to tangle something up, you're trying to mangle, like you're trying to smash it to bits, tangle it like it's ensnare, like catching crawfish, like in South. You can use like a little brush to catch them, and then tangle, mangle, dangle, strangle is like you catch it by the neck and you strangle it, or you catch its foot and you dangle it. So that's kind of like the type of traps. But even those they're not that reliable, because you gotta find game trails that animals actually go on.
Well, first of all, you gotta know how to set it up.
Yeah, and you're building them out of like resources around you, which is not necessarily 100% reliable. Yeah. Deadfalls are kind of easy to make, but then the triggers are kind of hard, and even so, like you carry. Like I think we were talking the other day when we were out there in the middle of the desert, not in the middle of the desert, but in the middle of Nevada, talking about like way one person can fish for many. So say you got designated in the tribe to be the one that's out there to gather food, and there's a body of water. You can just take, it's called, from Arkansas, and we used to, there are all sorts of kind of ways we can do things that are non-traditional. We call something called jugging. You just take anything that has a jug, like a half-liter bottle, for a mortal, anything that floats. You just run lines off of it, like a 1.5 foot line with the weight and a hook, and you bait it, and you just throw it out in the water. And when the fish hits it, the bottle stands up. So one person can have 10 lines out in the water and fish like 10 people. So that's a good way to like feed yourself. Yeah. And then you can take a half-liter bottle, make a minnow trap. I mean, where you cut the top off, you flip it, turn it inside, and it's like a little funnel, and the dumb little minnows, they swim in there and they can't figure out how to get out. So you can do that same concept with bigger fish too, by anything you make on the riverbank. You just take sticks and you line them out into the river, and then you make a funnel going back in. So catfish and other fish will swim in. And they'll try to take the edges out. They won't figure out to go to the middle. Yeah, so there's lots of ways to do it.
Stupid fish.
I know. And then so we got food, water, and then shelter's a big one. But shelter's only important. Well, the shelter can change on the list depending on the environment. So the ability to regulate your body temperature is really what it comes down to. Whether if it's 70 degrees outside and sunny, shelter is like lower on the list than things. But if it's -5 degrees and cold, shelter's high on the list.
It's everything.
Yeah, it's everything, right? Same thing if it's 115 degrees. Being out of the sun's a big thing. So shelter the ability to actually either make a shelter or find shelter using a map. Like we were talking about before, if you can read a map, the contour lines, you can see where cliff edges are, or where dry riverbeds are. You can see those types of things where you can collect water and find shelter as well.
Okay, cool. Do you have any tips for like hot weather or cold weather? Like if you're stranded, like we were out in Nevada and your vehicle broke down, and for whatever reason your heater broke down and you're just out there exposed to the elements. Do you have any tips for that?
So that was I tested my theories on our trip, because I had a heater. I brought one of those little buddy propane heaters, right? But I wanted to see, okay, I know if I use that to heat my truck, it's going to keep it warm. That's a given, right? But you only get so many opportunities to test these things you theorize that could be correct, right? So I did just the blankets. That's all I did for my survival for the 2 nights. And I think was like -5 one night and it was like 2 degrees the other night.
Yeah.
Or 4 or something.
We were in the positive. That's all that matters.
Yeah, it was a positive. Yeah. we were in the positive numbers. So the first night, because in a vehicle, you're trying to do a couple things. You want the area you're sleeping in as small as possible because that your body puts off a lot of heat. So you don't want to have to try to heat the entire van. So wherever your area is going to be, whether it's the front or the back, you want to try to wall it off using. I use blankets in my case, and then windows are huge areas of loss of heat because the heat just gets sucked right out because it's always trying to equalize the temperatures, right? So I put just a sleeping bag like in the windows, so then that heat that radiating off me won't get lost into the Nevada space, and then I close it in by having the blanket behind me. So essentially, I was sleeping in my driver's compartment with the seat leaned back, and with just a wall of blankets around me. And I think I had the window cracked just a little bit of fresh air in. And then I just stuffed one sleeping bag or one blanket down by my feet, and I put one behind me because most of your heat's lost through your head and your chest. That's the majority of your heat lost from. So I could have a beanie on and I had a nice clean shirt on. Grabbed myself in the blanket and I was good.
Really?
Yeah, I slept like that.
Interesting.
For both nights.
Okay.
It worked. The first night I screwed up because I did not put down a dry bag on the floorboard with my socks because the floorboard was wet from all the snow. So my feet got a little cold that first night, and the second night I learned from my mistake. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Let's change the topic to communication.
Communication, all right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So we were all using GMRS radios, and I'll just do the disclaimer that if you use the GMSR Freaks, you have to technically be licensed through the FCC.
If you go, I think it's
an
above
online
the 10,
thing.
It's like the 5 and below, I think you're fine. And I think it's like the 10 and above. There's like the certain wattage.
Yeah.
Like the little walkie-talkies that everybody use, you're okay on those. It's like after, I want to say it's after 2.5 or 5 or something. You have to actually do what you're saying, get licensed to talk on it.
So just assuming that you are licensed and, you play by the rules and blah, blah, blah. So just want to get that disclaimer out there. But with the GMSR radios, I know there's like ham radios, there's CB radios. Like, can you tell everyone like the difference and like why would you want a GMRS over a ham, or why would you want a ham over a CB? You know what I mean? Like, what radio is appropriate for what circumstance?
So I will tell it via my evolution going through the whole, like, starting doing this, right? So my friends, we all started out with the little, those little not the GI Joe ones, but like little walkie-talkies, nothing simple, like 5. I think they're 5 watts or 2.5 watts, the small ones. So that was their original, which that technically kind of falls under the GMRS. The problems we had with those were the distance. It didn't, after about 200-300 meters, and they started really losing its receptions because it's not strong enough to overpower terrain and distance and stuff, right? So that was our first step, and then we're like, no, what? Let's roll to CBs. So then because that was the easiest, buying those and rocking it, which worked. Yeah. You know what I mean? It got you going, and then we rolled to CBs because like truckers use them, so they should be fine. And they did work. The issue with CBs are you have to tune the antenna so you put it on the channel, but then you also have to tune the antenna with this little box. And then it always seemed like say out of a group of 4 of us, I could talk to you, you couldn't talk to me, but you could talk to him, and then he could talk to you, and then so he would have to. So we were always one person was left out of the loop when it comes to like the tuning side. So it was by far was user error. But just to my point though, if I was screwing it up, somebody else probably would screw it up too. So I wouldn't say it's the easiest to use. Yeah. I base myself as like the average person doing things, or at least maybe average, maybe below to
I'd say you're a little bit above average, but
of like figuring communication stuff out. So I would say if I had problems doing it, then someone else probably have problems too. So you have to tune CB. So that's why, and their range isn't that great either. It's okay. I mean, you can get 40 watt CB, so you have to bump them up. It's kind of like the other radios.
Yeah.
And then you have a lot of traffic too on those channels too, because you have truckers that come through. So and there's no like sub channels or anything, so you kind of you have to bounce around a lot. And then you have after that you have like the next level of radios we went to ham. Yeah, went to ham radios. I wouldn't consider myself like a comm guru or nothing. So hams work really well. You can get a lot of watts, which means you can cover a lot of distance. You can do a lot of cool things. You can download data through ham radios. You can send like you can send information, you can bounce things off.
Do you have to have a license to use a ham radio?
Yeah, for ham radio, you have to take a test and have a license. Yeah,
like no matter what freak you're on.
Doesn't matter what freak you're on. Yeah, you have to, and it's actually a written test. It's not a like GMRS. You just you pay like a government extortion fee, and then you're good.
Like $90 or something.
Yeah, and then so yeah, with the ham, you actually have to pass the test. With the GMRS, you don't have to pass the test. So we had the ham radios. There's so many things you can do with a ham radio. They're by far the superior out of all communication when it comes to versatility. Mm-hmm. However, just like back to like the medical supplies, it doesn't matter what it can do if you don't know how to do it.
Right.
So it can do all these wazoo things, but you don't have the skill set to pull it off. Then who cares if it can talk to freaking somebody in Indonesia?
I mean, what kind of skill set do you need other than like put it on the freak and then push a button?
It's not quite that easy. It's like you have to know what freaks to tune it to. You have to know the way to relay it to other slots, and then for the data, the menus are super deep, and there's a lot of stuff into it. It's doable, and you can do it, but you have to put the effort into learning. It's not just something you're not going to walk out to a ham radio and say, okay, I want you to roger somebody up in South Africa right now. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Now, if you're actually a ham radio operator and you've put some effort and time into it, I'll tune this repeater talks to that repeater, and this repeater will send it across the Atlantic, and then
so the mileage and the space that you can cover is like way more than
because they have repeaters. Meaning like say you could be in Nevada right now. I could talk to you here in my house in Southern California.
Oh snap!
Because if I know what repeater to send the first signal to, that will send it to the next one. They'll send it down to you, and you tune into that one.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's lots of stuff you can do with the ham that is superior. Now, once again, if you don't know how to do it, who cares?
Yeah. Now,
with GMRS, you get some of the benefits of ham with some of the ease of like a CB, because you just turn it to a channel. The channel is it can have up to 50 watts, which is like the max. We use Midland stuff. Like it's simple stuff. It works really good. And they just came out with a 50 watt one right now, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, 50 watt one. So 50 watts is the max they use on those GMRS channels, and 50 watts goes a long ways.
Like what's a long ways?
I mean, don't quote me here, but I mean at least 15, 20 miles of line of sight easily.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, easily we'll go that far, if not further. Well, hell, let me think. One time I was in Riverside, my buddy was climbing up the mountain towards Big Bear, and I just had 15 watts, and it made all the way to him. Easily. So it goes a long ways. Terrain has something to do with it a little bit, the way the signal bounces, but 50 watts, it will go a long ways. That's plenty for most stuff you're doing, as far as like convoy things.
Okay. Can a ham and GMSR talk to each other?
Yes, they can. Kind of vice versa. Because GMRS frequencies are an actual frequency, and then if someone has a ham radio that's tunable to GMRS frequencies, they can communicate with you on those GMRS frequencies. You can't adjust yours. Yours is only whatever they say. Your channels dictate what your frequencies are versus like a ham radio. Most ham radios versus most GMRS radios, you can actually tune them to a certain frequency. So they can just tune to the frequency. Like channel, I don't have my little card in front of me. It's in my vehicle, but like channel 16 has a 162 point whatever the number is. They can tune their radio to that number, that frequency, and they'll talk to you on your GMRS radio, which is like your Midland radio. So they can usually break it down to you. You can't really go to them because you're just stuck with whatever it's the channels are dedicated to, and those certain channels.
So it sounds like GMRS is the way to go. It's like the easiest.
It is by far the
most effective. And
yeah, it works. The distance is good. The learning curve is easy. Yeah, I would say GMRS is by far the certifications. You just got to pay the government extortion fee, and that's it.
I wonder why that is.
I'm guessing that they're saying it because they have to dedicate people to check over the certificates.
How do they find you if you're using the frequency?
I mean, so if you are using it, and I guess it's like self-identification. Yeah, unless they can't really pin you down because they don't know where you're at. They just hear you talking, and then unless you say you are, like hey Bob Williams at 2124 Apple Street. How you been, bro? You know what I mean? Like that might be the way.
But
you
they don't have like a machine where they can
triangulate.
see where the. Oh, okay.
Nah, it's nothing like that. It's more with and then don't get me wrong. Far as like the certification is good because there's radio etiquette and things like that some people might not know, and then there's certain procedural things when it comes to, because these ham radios are also used for like safety, like rescues, like police and fire and forest service and all those guys they use. That's one of the frequencies they can get on too. So if you have a very capable radio and a very low skill set, you can get yourself into channels that you shouldn't be on and screw up things that are actually important. So that's one of the reasons why the testing is actually pretty legit for ham radios. GMRS, it's just a freaking channel. I mean, yes, pay the fee, I guess, so they leave you alone. But
basically, you're a big fan of that.
yeah, but it's just you tune to the channel. You can't actually get on an emergency channel like for force service through GMRS because there's only the channels are listed versus like ham radios. You can go in all sorts of kind of places where you're not supposed to go and mess up like real operations.
Yeah, I hear that. So, what's your go-to for emergency communication?
Like saying you got to think a couple options, right? Cell phones are
well, cell phones isn't even a thing.
Cell phones are not reliable because you can be somewhere where there's no cell service very easily.
Oh yeah.
Even though you had it 2 minutes ago, you drive in a couple hundred yards, and now you have a problem, and now you don't have cell service. Now you're trying to walk to find cell service, and that stuff bad happens. So cell phones for me are not by any means close to my primary. It's like I know primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary. I don't. What would be the? I don't know the list. How do you say it after that? I know primary, secondary, right? And then you have tertiary, which is like your third, and then after that, I don't know how to say fourth or fifth.
I don't know. You're screwed and you're more screwed. I don't know.
So cell phone would be way on the list as a plan, right? For me, I used to use just a rescue beacon, which mine is a spot rescue beacon. It's got like a little, it's just like old school BlackBerry, the keyboard, so you can type into it. It's as simple as it comes. There's some that, you can Bluetooth in your phone, but my theory is that the simpler the better when it comes to like life-saving stuff. I don't want to try to, I'm saying if I'm using this rescue beacon, someone could be hurt, and now I'm like, I got the thought of someone being hurt, and I'm trying to pair my phone and
Well, so plus your battery could die on the phone too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one more. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's one more thing that could fail on you versus I just like the little spot with the keyboard on it. It's simple. You can text. You can do prearranged messages. It's got a SOS button that you can press that will.
What company is this again?
Spot. S-P-O-T. Spot. The another company that does them is Garmin. They have one too. It's called Garmin InReach.
Yeah.
I never used it personally.
Those. Yeah.
I think I bought the Spot just because it was cheaper. That was it. The device was cheaper.
Yeah.
The service is the same. The device was cheaper. I think I only paid a couple $100 for it versus I think the InReach was more. And I like the layout of the keyboard too. That was a big thing for me. It actually had a legit like keyboard you can type into. It looks like you're typing into a calculator, kind of like an old school, but it works. And like you get prearranged messages. So like I used to when I just had that, I would send that like if she wasn't with me, you can text her in like at night because it goes off satellites.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's got an SOS button you can hit. That will summon help. It'll contact the force service, depending where you're at, and then you can send somebody to your location. It shows your data and all that stuff. And then you have the option too, if you just want to, like your own help, you can text somebody like, "Hey, your friend that lives in the area," you can text them, let them know. Yeah. So that's an easy one, and it works pretty well. Then sat phones, thanks to Agile, we have a sat phone now for our trips, which. Just is another layer of protection, right?
Yeah.
Because you can call directly to people. You can call directly to a hospital. You can call 911. It's not going to know where you're at.
Yeah.
But you can call, and then you just have to tell them where you're at.
Where are you? I don't know. I'm in trees. There's a lot of trees. Or I'm in the
next
desert.
to the creek, and there's a tree, and there's a turtle.
There's a lot of dirt going on around me. No. Yeah. That would be kind of difficult.
So sat phones are actually, and they're not super expensive. It depends how much you travel. You can pay by the minute. It's like old school cell phones. Where in old school cell phones, you get like 10 texts.
Yeah,
and you have 100,
like this big,
and you get like 100 minutes of data, 100 minutes of phone calls. You have to actually prioritize who you called. So sat phones are kind of like the like that, where you buy a plan that has a certain amount of minutes, and you just buy it for the phone itself.
Yeah.
So if you travel solo a lot, it's probably a good idea because it's a lot easier and you feel a lot better if you get on the phone and you hear a voice talking to you like we're here, we're there, versus like a spot device, which works and it's like a fire and forget kind of thing. You hit the SOS button, throw it down, and where it still gets service, and you go back to doing your work, and it starts working the problem from there. Versus a phone, you can talk, have a conversation. Hey, we're here. This is what happened. We need, we have 3 people injured. This is the type they can't walk. They're down a ravine, so we need some sort of crane. So you kind of do a little more. You can give a little better, set rep.
Right.
And then the last thing that some people will say that you can use is ham radios, which is true. You can use ham radios to call for help because there's people that monitor. I think it's I can't remember if it's at the top of the bottom of the hour, but there's dedicated like rescue freaks and things. But that also goes back to practice. If you know what you're doing, it helps. You can use it. But if like say you don't do any, you took your ham radio test when you're a kid, you still got your license, you use it maybe once a year. that's what you want to bet your life on when you're stressed out. It's like, remember what freak to tune into and what to do. So with all this stuff, whatever you practice on is what you should use. And the simplest things by far is like a rescue beacon or a sat phone.
Okay, cool. Well, we covered a lot today. Is there anything else that I forgot to ask or that's important that we didn't cover?
My main thing is just, I hear a lot of time from people like, I'm waiting to get this to go. I'm waiting to get that. As soon as I get my roof rack on, I'm going to go, listen, just go get some safety stuff like recovery gear, depending on like what recovery gear and what other stuff you have, just how far, just get out. The sooner you get out there, the better. And then the other theory is that, like, oh, you only can really get in remote places in in like Africa or Australia. So that's the scam people start saying all the time. They're like, you can't go any like real long distance trips in the United States. There's plenty of places you can go, be like 50 to 100 miles from people in the United States. So don't let it be discouraging. If you want to have that old school sense of adventure like Lewis and Clark, that's all. It's like discovering the West. That's my favorite things, like seeing new places and the idea of like being out in the middle of nowhere. So you can do it. Just go, do it. That's it.
Okay. That's great advice. So my last question that I ask everyone in the podcast, and this is kind of more relevant to you because you actually guided Stow Nation community, is what does it mean for you to be part of the Stow Nation community?
The people are really, really nice and friendly and helpful. I mean, from all the van people that we've done with over the years, they're good people. So I like that, and everybody's like, it's a real good community as far as like during the trip, we had some inclement weather, I would say. So there were some problems that needed to be solved, and everybody had a good attitude about it. No one was like complaining about anything, even though the weather conditions were rough. I think they actually enjoyed the adventure of it, which for me, that's people that enjoy adventure. Man, those are my favorite type of people. Like if the conditions are really bad and they're like, yeah, this is awesome. That's my favorite type of people. So that was really good. I really appreciated that. As far as running the trip, it made it a lot easier on me too. Yeah. Because I didn't have to try to cater to like people complaining. There was that one night, I think the first night where things were a little iffy, but I was running out of options. I mean, because usually, man, I'm a Swiss Army knife of options. But the snow really killed all the campsites, man. It made it rough.
Oh yeah.
Because and then the amount of snow I knew it was going to snow that night, so I didn't want to get too far down in there. And then instead of being stuck, 2 miles from the main, we're stuck 50 miles. It's a whole process. So it killed a lot of options. And the options I did have that I know were good, I didn't like. They were too far away. I didn't want to do that. But it all worked out in the end.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Everyone there, we were all champs and
we
ready
ended
to
up
go.
camping on the old postal route, the Pony Express route.
Yeah,
so that worked out good. But the main thing is with all that stuff too, like you just got to keep going, figure out, just keep thinking. You'll eventually come across an answer if you keep putting your mind to it.
Yeah.
So that was definitely one of the harder, man, because I've done tons of these trips and I'll figure it out. My options were a lot less that night. I was like, well, that ain't gonna work. I'm like, and I'd run the scenario in my head. I'm like, well, that's not gonna work. I run the scenario because I'm thinking about how much time we have to go the next day and like all those factors.
Yeah.
So that was good for me. I learned something, so it's good.
All right, cool. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed hanging out with us.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was really fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And I'm sure you probably be a repeat guest because all these topics that we talked about, I mean, we can go in so many different rabbit holes. That would be an episode in itself.
Absolutely.
But anyways, I think we brushed the general, information, especially for someone who's just now starting out, which is the goal of the podcast, not for like a super expert that's been, someone like you, you'd probably be like, ugh. My time.
The funny thing is, I took a class the other day. It was like was it emergency vehicle operations? Like the off-road evoc course.
Stow Nation is a production of Park Media. The executive producer is Young-Wha Kim. The audio engineer is
Stephen Grasso.
The marketing director is
Guillaume Golsong.
The original music and artist is done by
Jason Walsmith.
The sound designer is
Lorenzo Interiano.
And the webmaster is
Peng Shi.
Without any of these people, this podcast couldn't happen, so a big, huge thank you. And a big, huge thank you to you, the listener. If you like this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a 5-star review. This is Young-Wha with Stow Nation, and I can't wait to share the road with you.